AI agents are already reshaping the workforce. But most organizations don't have a strategic plan in place that reflects that. Today on RPI Tech Connect, we'll cover where things stand in the workforce, what organizations need to know about planning ahead, and how you can get started right now. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, for another exciting episode of RPI Tech Connect. I'm your host, Chris Ari, and today I'm joined by Marcus Mossberger of LYTIQS and Melissa Olson, Director of Infor Solutions here at RPI. For our session this morning, we're going to be talking about something that's moving very fast, and that is AI agents. Specifically, we'll be talking about the cost, the impact that they're having, and how organizations can start planning their future workforce around them. So Marcus and Melissa, welcome back to the show. It's been a minute.
Thanks, Chris.
So Marcus, let's start with you real quick. Let's set the stage. When you talk to HR and finance leaders right now, how are they describing what's happening with AI agents and their workforce?
Yeah, I think right now, Chris, they're really in this exploratory phase. And I would even add IT to that mix too, right? Because you've got HR leaders that are like recognizing, okay, work is changing. We're not only going to augment work, but we're going to automate a lot of it. What's available? What's out there? What's it actually capable of doing? That's like the big question right now, Chris, is what is AI actually capable of doing? There's immense promise, but tangible ROI continues to kind of lack. And then the finance folks are like, wait a minute, are you saying I could use like all these agents to do a huge portion of the work? And they're like counting the money already, like, oh, this is amazing. We're going to be so much more productive and so much more efficient. And then the IT guy gets involved and goes, okay, hold on. Let's see how this actually works, how it works with our existing infrastructure and our existing technology. And then the last piece, and I'm curious to hear Melissa's point of view on this, is the people that are doing the work, I guess you would call them operations folks, are like, well, somebody needs to dig into the actual processes and the workflows and identify where we're inserting these agents and making sure that we understand how they will be supervised to make sure that they're not giving away products or saying crazy things to customers or whatever it is. So it's so early days. It's absolutely fascinating. I still think I'm very optimistic about the future, but it's messy right now.
It really is. I think a lot of people have been trying to figure out, how do we get value from AI? And the last couple of years have been, where are the use cases in the Infor software? Where are the use cases on the people side? There's been some great use cases on the supply chain and finance side, but because we're people, all of our processes are not always exactly the same. There are always exceptions to most of the processes within HR. And when you have those exceptions, it's hard to, I guess it's harder for the RPA type of process, which, the process mining side of it. But now that we get into the agentic side and we can start training, I was having a conversation with a client about this yesterday. It's, we have policies. Humans don't necessarily decide what to do when an approval comes to them. They're interpreting the policy. So as agentic comes in, those agents can be, trained on these policies, but there should always be oversight. And I think in the HR area, I think humans will always still be a part of it. So it might be these hybrid processes. What are the areas that we can have agents kind of tactically complete where, every HR professional I talk to in client side, they have all these initiatives and they can't get to them. They're just, they're either trying to fix the processes or get to the data, track the data they need in the system, or they're just inundated with requests, everyday, daily operations work. So this will finally free up those professionals to do some more strategic planning for their workforces.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out that you said, though, Melissa, that's really key is this is a lot easier if you have standardization and consistency in your processes and your workflows. And a lot of organizations don't, which is actually where I think Infor's process mining tools become incredibly valuable, because that gives people insight into, yeah, we are seeing there's not a whole lot of consistency in how these things happen today. So until it becomes more consistent and standardized, it's going to be harder to automate.
Yeah. And I mean, you even think about, and most organizations, all of these employees are legacy employees, so they get specific different treatment. And union employees, the contracts have been changed and those need to be updated. So there's just so much movement, I think, even negotiations from leaders, negotiated rates, negotiated accruals. There's so many exceptions that it's even hard to automate the processes in the software we have today. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Marcus? Should they get to a standardization? I mean, we're still talking about people. Do you think that should be the direction, or do we keep that exception based, people are special. We treat them specially when we hire them, they are the little pearl in the oyster. And that's what HR is all about doing, is trying to ensure that the employees feel appreciated, they feel valued, they feel they're compensated. And,
Yeah, I think the answer is both, Melissa. I think you need some degree of standardization where you've got a general track that you keep people on, but then there's flexibility within that. Because I do think people are expecting a little bit more what I'll call personalization in their experience at work. We experience a lot of personalization in our consumer lives, right? And I think we're starting to see that expectation gravitate into our work life too. And hey, I don't want to be treated just like Melissa because I have different skills, abilities, different personality, different preferences. And so that should come into consideration when we set these things up. So it's a delicate balancing act, and it's a bit of an art form, isn't it?
It is. It's what we kind of try and do in implementation, right? Is we try and standardize as much as we can, but we understand culture at the organization. We understand there's just a lot of factors that go into why not. So
agreed.
This will be one more shot at like, hey, if you want to automate with agentic AI, then you need a little bit more standardization, or you need a lot more oversight over those agents.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking here about the impact that the AI agents are having in the workforce. And if I'm hearing y'all correctly, it's that before you even get to a place where you're inserting that into your workflows and stuff, you need to do some work up front, standardizing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Marcus, in your experience, I believe you mentioned a stat when we chatted previously, like a lot of companies right now aren't really planning around agentic AI in their workforce, and they should be.
I think in general, what we're seeing is that a lot of organizations aren't thinking far enough into the future when it comes to what we refer to as strategic workforce planning.
Okay.
So recognizing and understanding as AI capabilities continue to evolve, and they are, like, daily, they're getting better and better. That is going to have significant implications for your workforce. So more and more of the tasks associated with certain jobs will be taken away and given to agentic AI. And so how do you then plan for the future relative to what becomes of that role if 40% of the tasks are now done by technology? Does the role get combined with another role in the organization? Does it go away? Does it become something completely different? So what we're suggesting organizations start to think about is doing some scenario planning and modeling for the different futures. It's kind of funny. Melissa and I have been around long enough to remember, well, we just need the right person in the right role at the right time and the right cost, with the right training.
Yep.
And you know what? I don't think we can be right anymore because we live in such a constantly changing world. We have to be ready instead of right. And ready means being ready for a variety of futures. And so that's again where we're going to have to make sure we're bringing people into the organization that can be adaptable and move around based on the changing needs of the organization. So it's kind of funny, Chris, you got to plan for the future, model these scenarios, but then be really flexible when the future shifts, and it inevitably will, won't it?
I really like that framing around the not being right, but being ready, because of the rate that AI is changing, it's really hard to predict what any one future. So you've got to predict a number of different scenarios. So I really like that. I want to talk now about something that you alluded to earlier with like the finance team getting excited about hearing that we're going to save money because, agentic AI is going to take over that task. But that brings up this conversation between talent versus tokens. And so I think the reality is that tokens can be quite expensive, and maybe so much so that more than a full-time employee. Like, what can you share?
Yeah, this is where, again, it's a balancing act of how much do we invest in AI and AI infrastructure. And this is where there's been a lot of headlines in the media about organizations that are laying off their workforce in large part because I need money to go set the AI infrastructure up to buy the tokens. So this constant balancing act of talent versus tokens, Chris, I think what we're seeing is it's a bit of a pendulum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now you're seeing a lot of organizations that have over-rotated to AI and have maybe some unrealistic expectations of how much they're truly going to be able to automate. And I think it's going to come back to an appropriate balance of, yes, you do have the ability to invest in AI to automate and augment a lot of what's going on in terms of the work today. But the human piece is not going to go away. It's a matter of figuring out what is the appropriate balance for your organization. Melissa, you mentioned culture a few minutes ago. That has a huge impact on how organizations do this. And you're seeing some with that kind of culture go, we're all into AI and we're letting everybody go. And then they realize, oh, crap, we may have kind of jumped up too soon into that. So I think this is where organizations are starting to experiment. Melissa, what are you seeing in terms of organizations trying to get that balancing act right?
Yeah, there's it's a couple of things, right? It's both the Infor delivered AI products, the Velocity Suite, the process mining, the Gen AI. Their Connect conference was last week, and there was a lot of buzz around the agents that had not been there previously. So there's that discussion. But prior to that, there was the regular GPT, Claude. How are these organizations, bringing them in? And they have all of, like you're talking about, they're so excited about it. They have, think it's going to be positive on their people, on their processes. People are excited to use it, from what, people I've talked to. But again, there's no standardization across it, right? So, last year we had DoD issues with OpenAI, and this year it's Anthropic with Fable 5. And, if you do all of your development with one LLM, what happens when that LLM is canceled? And, you can't, what are you going to do? You're going to move to the next one, but now you've invested millions in leveraging Anthropic or OpenAI or Gemini or whatever it may be. I think there is a push to have internal LLMs. I mean, that's the safest thing, building them out, but that's where the cost comes from. You're not going to find somebody in your IT department that's going to build out and, tag and, be able to build out all of your data within an LLM to be able to leverage without external company LLMs coming in. You're still using tokens when you're doing that. It's just you're not paying somebody else, you're paying NVIDIA, or you're paying, wherever you're hosting it. So, it's so early days, but I haven't seen the trepidation that I expected to see around it. There are a lot of clients or people that I've talked to that are, going forward, and their organization supports either use of those other products. And then they're really, really looking into how can we bake in the Velocity Suite? How can we leverage it? Are we going to get this value? And I think Infor is trying to price things in a way that gives organizations a chance to try it, to build some things out with a limited amount of tokens within their license. And then if it works and they can build those business cases, then they go and they subscribe to it, which is FTE of a C-suite, pretty much. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you really think about it like an FTE, and you really are looking at how much across the organization, can you quantify how much across the organization is being done with it? And does it equate to one leader's FTE? I don't know.
Wow.
Or maybe that's 2, maybe that's 3 FTE. If you divide that subscription cost out into salaries and benefits and all the other things, I think organizations should be looking at it that way versus looking at it like, oh, it's an extra X $100,000 on top of my licensing fees. Right?
For organizations that are listening in and wondering, how do I find the balance between tokens and talent and what's the right, spread of each? That sounds like something that they need to be planning for, but that sounds like a difficult thing to do. Any thoughts or recommendations, best practices on how to begin that kind of process, Marcus?
Yeah, I think, well, Melissa, you started the conversation talking about value, right? And how do we quantify whether or not we're getting value from AI? So I think we have to try to figure that out up front. And again, I think what's happening is there's maybe a misunderstanding that, we'll just make these investments in AI and then we can let a bunch of people go. And that's going to save us a ton of money. But those investments in AI are turning out to be as expensive, if not more so, than the actual people themselves. Now, I think what organizations are betting on is that, yes, I'm making a ton of investment right now in AI, but that will come down over time, right? Which we historically do see. And I think that's an appropriate expectation. The question is, how quickly does it come down and how far does it come down? And then at that point, do those investments, they have made sense for the value and the ROI that they're going to get out of them? So I think that's the debate and discussion that's happening between HR, finance, and IT is, okay, how much should we be betting on this, knowing that it's not actually fully baked yet? And we don't know exactly how much value we're going to get. So I think that's where you have to comes back to that scenario planning and modeling and saying, okay, well, let's assume this is going to happen, and then let's track that over time. Chris, this stuff used to happen like once a year. It was funny. I was just talking to my wife about this the other night. She used to be in finance. And she was like, I remember when we used to do headcount planning, we wouldn't even involve HR. We would just kind of do it from a budgetary perspective, right? And it would be once a year, and we would control all of these people and all of these seats in the organization and then distribute the plan. And now it's like, it can't be annual. It's like literally like ongoing, conversations about shifting people from here to here and understanding things, Chris, like the AI exposure rates in specific roles in the organization. That's something that's a new conversation that we're having with organizations. And if you look at this role, this one is very vulnerable to AI, meaning we're probably going to take a lot of the tasks associated with that job and give them to AI. So let's plan ahead for what we're going to do with those individuals. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I like that term of AI exposure too. It's from understanding it contextually here. It's the types of roles that will be more susceptible to work being replaced by AI. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
What a dystopian time. I mean, I have to call that out, right? Like, we can't ignore that like, we're having a conversation right now about like companies that are reducing their headcount in lieu of tokens, and it's wild. I'm sorry.
It is.
No, using that term though, dystopian, is appropriate. It's made me recently. I've literally went and got 1984, the book. I went and got Brave New World. I read that again. Like, it's wild to read these books that talked about this dystopian future and see some of this come to fruition. Having said that, again, I think the media, is trying to, sell papers and sell ads, and so I think there's more made of it than needed to be. And I think what you're seeing is some of that get pulled back in an acknowledgement. Maybe there's not going to be a job apocalypse. We are going to probably still have work to do. We're not all going to be, moving to universal basic income anytime soon. But it's going to be different. And that's, I think, the hardest part. That's actually, I think what's going to slow us all down the most, Melissa, is the people side. It's what people historically refer to as change management. And I've mentioned before, it's not change management, it's change enablement. But I mean, is that what you're seeing too? Like, relative to how do we embrace some of this in a way that's meaningful when the people side is going to slow us down?
Yeah. And it's the dystopian, but it's almost like we don't know what it's going to be. There's some level, well, I think back to the other times something like this has happened at a lower level. It's like, the .com era, there's just this explosion of new industry. We didn't have hundreds of Amazon warehouses or distribution warehouses everywhere before Amazon, Kindle, whatever. So that all created a whole new industry. So now there's FedEx. You used to work for FedEx or UPS, and you had a certain number of routes and they had a certain number of employees. But once the, internet.com bomb, whatever we want to call it, happened and everybody's just doing next day shipping, then those organizations just grew exponentially. So some brick and mortar will probably still grow. I think you may know the stat, Marcus, about how many workers are deskless. They're not in front of a computer. Infor was talking about this. How do we make the experience, the mobile experience, more unified and, less clicks? But all of those deskless employees are not going to be replaced by AI. Our healthcare workers, our transportation drivers, our mechanics. I've seen a swing back into the vocational schooling for kids coming out of college or high school, because, that is the one true, it's going to be there. So I think there is some security in knowing there are things that won't change. And if you wanted that secure path, instead of like joining the government and putting your 40 years in for that pension, now it's these vocational and deskless jobs that give you that security. So yeah, I don't know about the change within organizations, how they're going to approach it. I think we've had this conversation around your software, Marcus, around how we're going to have to reclassify jobs all the time. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a new task that HR is going to have to be doing. And a human is going to have to do that, because they're going to have to determine, how has this job changed? How, I need to rewrite it. I need to reclassify it. What does it become? Is it still, exempt? Is it non-exempt? So there's a lot of that type of work that will be happening, but who knows, AI might take that over too. But, I think I think we can talk all day about all of the ramifications, that we'll be seeing in the workplace. But
the deskless workforce, I think, is an appropriate thing that you hit on, Melissa. And my understanding is the statistic is 80% of jobs on this planet are deskless, shift-based, hourly. That, again, you're seeing a bit of an explosion. And I don't know if you saw what Meta's doing now, their new training program. I can't remember what they call it, like the American Worker Investment. I don't know. But they are basically saying, we will fly you to training facilities. We will pay you for weeks and weeks of training. So you'll get paid while you're in training. We will guarantee you a job. Okay. And it's all around things like welding and electricians, and like it's the stuff that they need to literally build the physical infrastructure to create these data centers. And so Meta's like, I will guarantee you a job. I will pay for your housing. Like, because they recognize that, again, they're going to need to continue to invest in people. But you also said something else that I think is interesting, that I think is important. And that is that HR is going to have to take on a different role in this new world. I think historically, and I've said this for a long time, that HR has the opportunity to move from being this administrative transactional function focused on compliance to one that's actually quite strategic. And one of the things I heard somebody else say the other day, I heard them say, HR needs to step up and say, I own the workforce. It is my purview. It is my responsibility. It is not you. No offense in finance. Mm-hmm. It's not you in IT, although you're going to supplement the workforce with some agents, and I appreciate that. But this is mine, and they need to step up and own it. And in more sophisticated organizations, you're starting to see that, which I totally dig.
Hell yeah. Let's go.
I know we'll go into so many different directions. So I know we want to have a little bit of structure around this because, I represent RPI and Infor. You're representing LYTIQS and, the tool sets that we're trying to, I think, just get people either excited about, either learn about if they're scared or they're like, this is way too expensive. I think it's all an educational period. Marcus, your LYTIQS, we've spent a lot of time with it, and you're giving all of the insights to make those decisions, right? It's like, what does this workforce look like here? And if we had to make cuts, what's the type of roles that should be cut and what should be moved? And it's not even roles that are cut. It's like the budget changes, it shifts. And so where do we move these people and what do their roles need to become? And I can't make those decisions based on gut or whether I like you or not. Yeah. It's, data based. And I know, LYTIQS has something that gives something that I've never seen before. And it marries that finance and that HR and gives executives, leaders, the insights into what they need to be able to do that is based on data, that is quantifiable, that is, you're bringing the skills in, knowing who your people are and what they can do and where to move them. So having those tools, having tools in Infor, I think that is going to elevate HR and HR function for sure.
I agree. I think it's the combination of the data points and it's the signals. It's the workforce related signals that are out there outside of your systems that are like in labor market data, inside your Infor systems, inside other ancillary systems. It's aggregating that in a way that gives you those insights, as you said, so that, Melissa, you can avoid cuts to begin with. We're hearing a lot about layoffs. Layoffs are a result of poor planning. Ooh. Okay? I mean, that's it. That's an oversimplification, I admit. But if you are good about understanding these different scenarios and models that you might expect, and then you track the progress toward them, then you pivot and you move this direction before you have to get to a mass layoff. These organizations so frequently are just lazy in not doing that planning, and then they have to make these huge cuts. So if you're good about this from the beginning, you'll never have to get to that point. That doesn't mean you don't have to redirect resources, and it doesn't mean that it's not complex. It certainly is. But it's just a matter of being able to create that agility in your organization, but doing it from a data-driven perspective. You use that word multiple times, Melissa, and I appreciate that.
I'm really glad you brought up...
We get trust right now. Sorry.
I'm glad you brought up solutioning, Melissa, because we've been talking about workforce planning and modeling different scenarios and bringing in finance and IT and HR working together. So Marcus, I am curious to hear, does LYTIQS do those things? What does the solution do? It's your 30-second sales pitch.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about taking a people analytics platform, what we would call kind of a workforce intelligence platform, collecting all of the data, all of those signals from all over the place. And then we actually have the ability to use AI. It's kind of funny, Chris, we're actually using AI to plan for AI because we're aggregating all of this and then running these scenarios to see, strategic workforce planning perspective. What if this happens? What if this happens? And again, we're combining workforce data with financial data, with operational data. In the world of like healthcare, for instance, we want to understand, the clinical side of things and the implications for decisions that are made. And then we can figure out, okay, how do we adapt and change based on those different scenarios and models? So again, it's far from perfect. Nobody can predict the future, right? That's why we can't be right. We have to be ready. And so that means aggregating all of this data in a meaningful way. And what's remarkable, Chris, is that according to our friends at Gartner, 86% of organizations don't do any form of strategic workforce planning. That's got to change. It will change because those organizations that don't do it will continue to see mass layoffs, will continue to make bad decisions, and they might not find themselves in an existence anymore because they're not planning for the future.
That's that stat I was looking for earlier. 86% are not doing it. That's a crazy high number.
It is. And I think that's going to change. It's kind of like that Marshall Goldsmith book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It's actually a pretty good book. It's a little bit older, but it's basically like, hey, what you've been doing in the past is just not going to be good enough in the future. This is a very different world that we're going to live in the next, not 5 years, in the next like 1 and 2 years.
Yeah.
People need to start taking action now. This is not something they can put off. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Very good. Melissa, anything to add about solutioning?
I think it's just the education, right? Whether it's in the Infor tool and Burst Analytics or Workforce, any kind of analytics coming out of WFM, or it's LYTIQS, or there's other tools out there. Have those conversations. Understand what workforce planning means, strategic workforce planning, what that means, and it's not just scheduling and putting people and figuring out, flu season's around the corner, we need to staff up. It's, there's a lot more into that. So, just educate yourself. There's new tools every day. We try and stay on top of some of those trends and some of the tools that fill the gaps that Infor doesn't have. So, we're always trying to find, things that clients can use that, again, use that elevate word, augment, whatever we want to use, because we have these tools that can do it. We don't have to just depend on smart people doing hard work. We can have smart people, hard work, and the augmentation with, the world's knowledge behind it to help make these decisions.
I like that, Melissa. And you use the word education. That's the challenge that we're faced with right now, is that when I say those 3 words, strategic workforce planning, I get a wide variety of responses. So again, back to this idea of standardization and consistency, we need that in terms of what does that actually mean? And the short answer that I would point out is that it used to mean months and months of planning. And as you pointed out, very smart people creating humongous spreadsheets and reams of data. And now what it means is pulling the data out of your existing systems into our system that actually gives you insights and perspective in minutes, not months. And so you don't have to go through that, incredibly manual, rigorous process. It's actually something we've simplified so that let's get you to a starting point. It's not going to be perfect, and then we'll iterate along the way.
Love that. Let's go workforce planning. I'm fired up. We are getting close to time, though, and I'm sure you both remember that before we wrap up, I always like to ask my guests if they have one actionable takeaway they want to share with today's audience, what it would be. So this is your quick elevator pitch. You got to know this after listening to the episode tidbit. So, Marcus, what do you got for us?
I would say the biggest thing that I'm realizing about my role is the need to be incredibly open-minded. Because again, it comes back to things are changing so fast, so frequently. And I think historically, we think we know what we're doing. We're like, I know how to do this and I know how to do that. And every single day I turn on my computer and go, oh my gosh, that's different. And I'm just like, and I think that we have to have a completely different attitude about work. And that's why I said what I did earlier about HR and saying, this is ours. We need to own this. And again, HR, I think, again, I heard the same guy that said HR has historically been willing to be passengers. Okay. And I was like, ooh, I just sit with that for a second. We can't be passengers anymore. We have to own this, and we have to be open-minded about doing it really differently than we used to. So, I mean, that's for me something that I'm trying to apply daily. And yeah, that means I use Claude a lot and ChatGPT a lot. And I'm like, okay, what else can I do totally differently? And again, I know it's an overused term, but to truly reimagine what this function is and how we go about doing it, I think it'll be in our best interest to do that.
I like that. That's a rallying cry right there. Open-minded, let's go, own it. Time to think differently. Melissa, anything else you want to share?
It would just be that stretch, that growth. We're going to have to do it no matter what. So, right now people are afraid of agents. All the tools, ChatGPT, Claude, Loom, all the tools out there have the ability to make agents now, and do it with your personal life. Just build a little agent to manage your email, something, because when you have kind of knowledge and ownership over the way something works, it's harder to be fearful of it. So, I think just go and learn, again, more of the education, but build out some agents and then start thinking about how can it replace you, right? Because then you know how to shift, or you know when to shift, or you know how to automate yourself to go move yourself to the next level. This really does let you wanted that promotion. If you automate some of your job, then you can show you have that skill set, as well as it's not enough work for you to do. So move me up to the next level. Again, simplifying, but knowing what in your job can be taken over by AI, that exposure will help you, again, have a little bit more control over your destiny.
Well said.
I really like that, Melissa. Do the scary thing. Do it. You'll be better for it.
Good for your brain, right? Learning new things every day is helpful for brain health. So think of it that way too.
Awesome.
Yes, for wellness.
This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you both so much for joining me again on the show. For those of you listening in, if you have any questions about strategic workforce planning, or you need help, or you want to learn more, we want to have a conversation with you. Please reach out to us at podcast@rpic.com. Again, that's podcast@rpic.com. This has been RPI Tech Connect. We will see you next time. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.